Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're exploring one of the most awe-inspiring, truly cinematic stories ever recorded in the Earth's crust, the formation of the Grand Canyon. It's a massive tale of deep time, colossal geologic forces, and one incredibly persistent river. So buckle up, because we are diving straight into this.
You know, when most of us look out at that sweeping, vibrant canvas of the Grand Canyon, we tend to think of a pretty simple story, right? We just assume the Colorado River carved it out over millions of years, end of story. But today, we're going to shatter that myth. The river absolutely did not act alone, and it certainly wasn't some simple, straightforward process. The true story is far more complex and honestly, way more fascinating.
To really grasp how this landscape came to be, we're going to follow a quick roadmap. We'll start with the canvas of deep time, then move through Stage 1, Tectonic Uplift, Stage 2, River Integration, Stage 3, the Great Carving, and finally wrap up with Stage 4, Ongoing Sculpting.
All right, let's jump into Section 1, the canvas of deep time, setting the stage.
Before a single drop of water started carving, the Earth had to, well, lay down the raw materials. And the sheer scale of deep time here is literally mind-bending. Down at the very bottom, about 1.8 billion years ago, the foundational Vishnu Basement rocks formed. Moving up, around 1.2 billion years ago, the Grand Canyon supergroup was laid down. Then, skip way ahead to 270 million years ago, and we get the Kaibab Formation. That's the rock that makes up the rims we actually stand on today. But the actual carving of the modern canyon, that didn't even begin until a mere 5 to 6 million years ago. So the rock is incredibly ancient, but the canyon itself is kind of like a geological newborn.
We can basically organize this ancient rock into three main steps from bottom to top. At the very base, we have the Vishnu Basement. These are incredibly hard, ancient igneous and metamorphic rocks. Right above those sits the Grand Canyon supergroup, which is made of tilted sedimentary layers. And finally, capping the whole thing off, we have the layered Paleozoic rocks. Those are the beautiful horizontal strata you see stepping all the way up to the rim.
Now, here's where it gets wild. When you look at how these layers stack up, you find a mind-bending feature called the Great Unconformity. See where the flat, horizontal Paleozoic layers sit directly on top of those much older basement rocks? There are hundreds of millions of years of Earth's history just missing right there, erased completely by ancient erosion. It's a massive gap in the rock record that scientists like the famous John Wesley Powell first marveled at over a century ago.
But those ancient rocks are just one piece of the puzzle. According to the Grand Canyon Conservancy, this landscape is actually the result of 5 unique intersecting factors. We've got the flat sedimentary rocks, their brilliant colors, massive tectonic uplift, river incision, and an arid climate. If you remove even one of those factors, the Grand Canyon as we know it simply wouldn't exist.
Okay, moving on to Stage 1, Tectonic Uplift.
So what is tectonic uplift? It's exactly what it sounds like, the geologic process of the Earth's surface rising. In this case, we're talking about an epic event called the Laramide orogeny, which peaked around 65 million years ago. Imagine hoisting that entire billion-year-old rock stack thousands of feet straight into the air to form a massive plateau. This huge uplift is what eventually gave our future river the steep gradient it needed to start cutting downward.
But this massive uplift created a major headache for scientists. As the region lifted, it formed a broad dome called the Kaibab Arch, and this setup created a mystery that drove geologists crazy for 150 years. The question was, how does a river flow uphill across a mountain? I mean, water doesn't flow uphill, right? Yet the Colorado River clearly crosses this high ground, which means something absolutely extraordinary had to happen to allow the river to carve right through that arch.
Which brings us right to Stage 2, river integration.
For decades, geologists were split into two totally different camps. On one side, you had the old canyon model, which argued the canyon was completely carved out over 50 million years ago. On the flip side, the modern consensus now points to Carl Karlstrom's composite model. This model suggests that yes, there were older, separate paleo-canyons, but they were actually stitched together by a much younger river just 5 to 6 million years ago. It's brilliant because it reconciles the old and new theories perfectly.
So how did this stitching together happen? Well, the leading theory involves the spillover of an ancient lake called Lake Bitahachi. Around 5.5 million years ago, this massive lake, which sat east of the Kaibab Arch, just kept filling up until it finally overtopped the high ground. It violently spilled westward, sending water cascading down, linking up all those ancient paleo-canyons, and finally integrating the Colorado River all the way from the Rockies down to the Gulf of California.
Let's dive into Stage 3, the Great Carving.
To understand how the newly integrated river managed to carve a mile deep into solid rock, we need to talk about river rejuvenation, specifically a process known as nick point propagation. When the river finally connected to the much lower Gulf of California, it was literally like pulling the plug in a giant bathtub. The river's base level dropped dramatically. This sudden massive drop caused the river to aggressively cut downward into its bed to establish a new profile. The river was totally rejuvenated, armed with immense cutting power.
And the secret to that cutting power, it wasn't actually just the water. Geologist Wayne Ranney points this out perfectly, saying, think of this flood debris acting as a giant rock tumbler that can physically abrade the bedrock channels. It was the rocks, the boulders, the cobbles, the sand, and the gravel carried by those violent floods that acted like a relentless abrasive chisel, literally grinding away the bedrock.
Now take that rock-tumbling power and multiply it by an ice age. During the Pleistocene epoch, the carving was massively accelerated by ice age floods. Imagine massive glacial meltwater rushing down from the Rockies, carrying thousands of tons of abrasive debris. While the main river was furiously cutting a mile deep, these same intense weather patterns caused side streams to vigorously erode outward. Bit by bit, flash flood by flash flood, these tributary streams widened the canyon to an average of 10 miles across.
Oh, and we can't forget this incredible twist to the story, the Uinkaret volcanic field. About 3 million years ago, intense volcanic activity created massive lava dams that temporarily blocked the Colorado River. When these dams eventually failed, and they always do, they released catastrophic, unbelievable floods. Counterintuitively, these huge washouts actually increased the erosive forces of the river, hastening the canyon's deepening.
And that brings us to our final stop, Stage 4. Ongoing sculpting.
If you look closely at the landscape, it really highlights another absolutely crucial factor, the arid climate of the Southwest. Because there's so little rain, there aren't thick forests or deep soils to hide the rock. This dry climate prevents vegetation from covering everything up, keeping those brilliantly colored sedimentary layers beautifully, starkly exposed for us to see.
And hey, if you're thinking the carving is all finished up, think again. 160 meters. That is how much the Colorado River is still cutting down through the rock every single million years in the Eastern Canyon. This is driven by ongoing mantle upwelling. That means the Earth is still slowly lifting the plateau, and the river is still fiercely cutting down.
So, the really crucial takeaway here is that you aren't just looking at a static, dead relic of the past. You are witnessing a live, ongoing geologic event. Even with modern dams altering its flow today, the Colorado River continues its relentless work way down at the bottom of the chasm.
Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer today. As the Earth continues to lift the plateau and the river's relentless chisel continues to cut, what on earth will the Grand Canyon look like a million years from now? It's a humbling reminder that our planet is an active, living sculptor, and this grand masterpiece is still beautifully unfinished. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through deep time.